In space, no one can hear you judge. It's Sanctuary of Reality, my comic review series. Walk On with Church and State, Chapter 57, in Cerebus, Issue 108, Extrusion Intrusion. The judge answers Cerebus' fourth question. Who is Suentius Poe? Unfortunately, he doesn't realize there have been many men by the name of Suentius Poe. So the judge proceeds to start with the very first, who was a military recruiter who raised an army of young boys hundreds of years ago. He explains that this Suentius Poe's army marched into the Red Marches and fortified the area in the name of the Separate Empire. They ended up mostly slaughtered by the Picts, who were mad at the boys for marching on top of their land. So Suentius Poe continued to send more boy armies into the area with the same result. Each time, about 100 or so survivors made it out. Soon, Suentius Poe had a force of battle-weary, battle-tested survivors, making up 4,612 practiced killers. He then led them to the salt flats of Syria and had them fight amongst themselves for weapon and armor. The battle lasted days until the remaining 2,996 armored and armed warriors were pointed east by Poe, who gave one command: kill. They marched forth, the Picts this time giving them no quarrel. Suentius Poe I quickly died, hitting his head on a rock while trying to mount a horse. But his son Arthur took up the name Suentius Poe and resumed leading the army. The judge is just about to get into the involvement of Pope Clovis IX when Cerebus strays behind him, distracted by the view of Earth, and becomes lost on the lunar surface. When he realizes he can no longer hear the judge, he shouts, but no sound escapes. Cerebus wanders about until he finds the judge, who is still talking, and manages to rejoin him without him ever noticing he was gone. By this time, he's done answering his question and resumes the meaningful issues. The judge claims that in around the year 2000, evidence will be discovered that at one time all of the energy and matter in the universe was located in a single spot, which superheated and exploded outward, creating the Big Bang. But the men who discover it aren't storytellers, so they leave off the beginning of the tale, due to it being a non sequitur because it was garbled by a priest thousands of years prior. What is the beginning of the tale? The Suentius Poe talked about in great detail in this issue is not the mind games guy. I believe that one is merely named after the original Suentius Poe, though not too much after. Just a little hint there. Ultimately, this particular Suentius Poe's history is actually not important to the series overall. It never comes up again, the whole boy army and everything like that. It's just an interesting bit of back matter to the, it's like if you're doing a soap opera and somebody starts talking about Abraham Lincoln. It's something, it's interesting to note about the world, but to the story you're watching, nah. It's an intriguing bit of a Starcy on history, but you can put it out of your mind. It's not important. They'll never come up again. The questions Cerebus asked are admittedly very expected from him. Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but like I mentioned briefly last episode, they aren't all exactly the truth, the answers. The judge may be omniscient, but he's not infallible. We'll get to that more on the next couple of issues. I like this issue in that we learn some history, but it's ultimately part of a whole. It's the sub-book makes up the sub-book, and as a result, it's tough to judge on its own merits as a single issue. because as that, it's just like I said, it's about something that's not important. So it's actually a waste of our time. You can skip this issue. No, I like the history bits. It gives color to the background of the world, this fictional world that Dave and Gerhard have forged. And so when we get to the end of this subbook, we can judge more along the lines of this whole subbook, because we're going to have to start doing that, because as we're getting to the more decompressed issues of the series. Next time, The Secret Origin of the Universe, Take 1.